good morning, and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning because I think it goes without saying we have a lot to discuss. We are going to be talking about what some are comparing to the deplorable moment where Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage, trying to walk that back, people distancing themselves from him. We're also going to weigh in on Kamala's rally in Washington. Huge crowds. I wasn't really surprised by huge crowds because it is Washington, meaning, there's a lot of people there with vested interest in seeing Kamala win for obvious reasons. But a big rally nonetheless. We'll talk about what she had to say. We also have an update on Donald Trump and his reaction to that comedian that has been getting so much attention by the media. And as we had mentioned on the program, that the focus was going to be laser-like on the Madison Square Garden rally, but also downplaying potential, let's say, bad news or potential whatever word you want to use for Harris. Some in the comment by Biden calling Trump supporters garbage has kind of been a mixed bag. Some actually reporting on it for what it is, which is not something Harris wants right now. But also some downplaying it, some actually talking about it. So we'll discuss that as well. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to be talking to Stacey Romeo. She is running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. Yes, I know we are heavy on the judicial races. Those are locally very contested, essentially just contested. Also, I do want to mention, because I know people really look forward to this, former congressman and current candidate for assembly, Joe Sempolinski, will be our guest on tomorrow's broadcast. We'll be probably about the whole 7 o'clock hour. So we look forward to talking with Joe. And if you have any questions for Joe, because remember, he's also the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. So yes, we're going to ask him about Prop 1. We're going to ask him about early voting. And again, I pose the question as I have every morning as of late. Did you early vote, or are you waiting until general election day? Now, if you did early vote, I'd love to hear your experience with that process. First of all, this is, I think, interesting news. We learned earlier in the week that an interview, well, we've learned a couple things. The interview that Donald Trump had with Joe Rogan, there was some concern yesterday and the day before that was being censored in a way by Google or downplayed by Google, so it was not easy to find. We had anecdotally personal experience from some viewers out there that could not find it easily. Then we also heard that a planned interview with Harris, not a planned interview, an interview with Kamala Harris and Joe Rogan that had been in the works for quite some time. It turns out that the Harris campaign wanted Rogan to jump through a lot of hoops, one being doing the interview not from his studio, and I'm not sure if he's ever done a show there from not in that studio, but his feeling on it was that would take away from the experience. Also, she only wanted to do a 1-hour interview, whereas, Donald Trump gave a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. So it looks as if, and I mean, there is still time for it, but it looks as if that is not going to happen. So someone jumped in to save the day for that interview that fell through, and that is none other than J.D. Vance. A spokesperson for J.D. Vance confirmed to Fox News just yesterday that the Republican vice presidential nominee will sit down with Joe Rogan this morning in Austin, Texas. The announcement came shortly after Rogan revealed on X that the negotiations with Vice President Kamala Harris essentially fell through, saying, also for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. So again, not ruling out the possibility of a last-minute interview, though as the days tick on, looking more and more unlikely. As you know, Rogan sat down with former President Trump for that 3-hour conversation that had garnered around 38 million views already. 38 million views. Wow. And it was about 3 hours. Normally they're between 2 and 3 hours long, his interviews. And at the time, Trump saying, can you imagine Kamala doing the show? Rogan, of course, being fair, saying, I could imagine her doing the show. She was supposed to do it. She might still do it, and I hope she does. Trump insisted she's not going to do it. But anyway, a 3-hour interview with Harris would be very, very interesting. Even an hour would have been interesting if that were to happen. But no word on how long the interview with J.D. Vance will last, but that is being recorded and I assume released. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how his system works. But recorded today. We'll see when that is released. Look forward to watching that interview with J.D. Vance and Joe Rogan. Okay, that was just an update for you. Yes, we have a lot of major, major issues to get to. One being, and I can understand the concern over this. There's been a lot of talk of it, which is some ballot boxes being attacked in Washington and Oregon, being set on fire. Those are those ballot boxes that many disagree with anyway, that you just place your ballot in there. Well, ballot boxes in Oregon and Washington may have been set on fire by anti-Israel protesters, as investigators found a note that said all drop boxes will burn, free Gaza. This is what the New York Post has learned. Now, it is being reported by some outlets as domestic terrorism, which would be the same, but they've used that label so often to kind of tar and feather Republicans that I think that's a little misleading, because if it is known, I mean, it has been reported to the Post that a note was found that all drop boxes will burn, free Gaza, then that is an act of anti-Israel protesters, which are still domestic protesters. But it'll be interesting to find out more about this. We know that it's been very interesting with the Madison Square Garden rally and trying to equate that to a Nazi rally, when for the last, over a year, since October 7th, with that terrorist attack in Israel, we've seen such a rise in anti-Semitism, such a rise in these anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-police protests, not just on college campuses. We saw the troubling one on the anniversary of October 7th in New York City. And going back to the quote that I have referenced so often, Van Jones saying, by no means a conservative, Van Jones, a former Obama official, saying that the Democrat Party now has a marbling of this anti-Semitism. And there's some speculation of how Harris has been doing her campaign in regards to that to ensure that vote stays with her. But between 3 and 4 a.m. on Monday, fires caused by devices, incendiary devices, were discovered in ballot boxes in Vancouver, Washington, and neighboring Portland, Oregon. A built-in fire suppressant stopped most of the flames in the Portland location, but hundreds of ballots were destroyed at the drop box at Fisher's Landing Transit Center in Vancouver. The FBI is now heading the investigation into the two Monday fires, which are believed to be linked and also connected to a third attempted arson attack earlier in the month in Vancouver. Election officials and law enforcement have remained largely mum about their investigation, and not something they want. Number one, they don't want people to worry that their votes aren't safe, or maybe that their votes were destroyed if they had already voted at those locations. Concerned about people maybe steering clear of voting in that way, but also I don't think they want the message to get out that if this is confirmed, that it is the anti-Israel protesters that have raised what's the word I'm looking for? Active, so aggressive on college campuses, but also in the streets. They've directed those who use the ballot boxes over the weekend to track their ballots online and to contact the local auditor's office for replacement ballots if needed. But according to an election official, with knowledge but not authorized to speak on record, so that's important. We're giving you the information, but I want to be clear, not authored to speak on record. I apologize. Fall's got me a little hoarse here, and all the talking we've been doing. A political letter was discovered in a ballot box at the Vancouver Mall parking lot location just a few hours after the fires were put out. According to the source, a white piece of paper folded in half had been deposited in the box. It is not confirmed if the message came from the suspect involved in the arson fire, but the New York Times reports that all three devices themselves had the message "Free Gaza" written on them. So if the New York Times is reporting all three had the incendiary devices had "Free Gaza" written on them, you start to see a common trend, don't you? The shopping center drop box is less than 15 minutes by car from the Fisher's Landing Transit Center, where one of the fires occurred. Now, the Clark County Auditor, Greg Kimsey, said that they would not comment at this time. The election source, though, tells the Post that county investigators have not publicly shared information about the investigation over fears it could keep voters from using the ballot boxes in the remaining days leading up to the election, or, of course, inspiring copycat attacks. All elections in Washington and Oregon are vote by mail. The arson attack come amid a closely watched congressional race rematch in Washington's 3rd congressional district, and the two are polling neck and neck. Representative Maria Gluskamp Perez, a Democrat, and Joe Kent, a Republican U.S. Army veteran. Okay, so that's just a quick update on what is a major story and a major concern for many. Now being linked, again, those fires being linked to anti-Israel protesters with the message of "Free Gaza." Okay, when we come back, I know we've all been waiting to talk about this, and here I am 10 minutes in, barely mentioned it, but Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this. Does it have as much impact as Hillary Clinton and the deplorables comment? What are your initial reactions? You know, yesterday we had a viewer ask the question, are they suggesting that Trump supporters are Nazis because of that Madison Square Garden rally? So anybody who attended that rally, are they suggesting that those people are Nazis? And I think reading the statements and hearing what people had to say, meaning the media and Democrats, yes, I think that's what they're trying to say. Specifically MSNBC, who spliced in photos from that, I think it was 1939, right? It was in the 30s, obviously. 1939 Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. There's a couple of points to note, though, that that's not even the same Madison Square Garden building. There's a lot of twisting yourself up into a pretzel to make that comparison. The media was willing to do that because they saw this as an opportunity to attack Trump and his supporters with a week to go before Election Day. So it's not the end of hearing about the Madison Square Garden rally, but this garbage remark has definitely caused some concern and some talk behind the scenes, and also realizing that it has created an opening where the focus can be on that and not just nonstop Madison Square Garden rally conversation. And again, I'll ask you, if you've had an opportunity to watch it, what did you think of the rally? I know Nikki Haley is now critical of it, but in a different way. We're going to talk about, as we always do in this program, both sides of what are being said about both campaigns, the Harris-Walz campaign and the Trump-Vance campaign. But we're just getting started and already running late, so stay with us. I know we're less than a week away from Election Day, so it's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of conversation. So you see the number on the bottom of your screen. Be a part of it. 607-358-3131. And we'll be right back after this. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. So President Biden is now, well, this gets a little interesting. His campaign, not his campaign, that ended a while ago. His staff saying that he denies the way the remark is being relayed to the public. President Biden denied Tuesday that he called supporters of former President Trump garbage. Earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump supporters at the Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it, he wrote on Twitter. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at that rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. Now, during what he had said during that question and his answer, this, again, President Biden. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American. So I don't see any way to spin this to not be exactly what it is, calling Trump supporters garbage. And one reason why I'm not shocked is we've heard similar rhetoric and even worse rhetoric, not from Biden necessarily, but from the media, from those after the rally comparing Trump supporters to Nazis. But is this, in your mind, is this to the level of the deplorables comment by Hillary Clinton, the irredeemable deplorables? It does show yet another disdain for Republicans. And what I mean by that is if you look at it with Trump supporters, going back to Hillary, it was deplorables and irredeemable deplorables. But if you go back to Obama, it was bitter clingers. You cling to your Bible and you cling to your guns. So it's a kind of a common trend, isn't it? Now, some are calling it a scandal. I don't necessarily know if the word scandal is right, but that word is used so frequently. You know, they called the Madison Square Garden rally a scandal, which I still don't quite understand. President Joe Biden's aides defended his smear on Trump supporters, trying to clarify his words. But what Axios learned is that White House aides insisted Biden's comments that, quote, the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, does not reference Trump supporters, but the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who made a joke during a Trump rally. Now, and of course, the media and the Harris campaign latching onto that comment by that comedian. We're going to tell you what Donald Trump had to say about that comedian here in just a little bit. But the White House released a transcript of Biden's remarks in a flimsy effort to suggest Biden referenced Hinchcliffe. But Axios, and again, Axios is no friend to conservatives. Axios, very far-left organization. Well, Axios' Alex Thompson reports a White House spokesperson refused to answer on the record when asked if aides had spoken to Biden before issuing the statement. Asked if they had spoken to the president to ask him what he meant before sending the transcript, the Biden spokesperson requested to go off the record. Axios declined, and the White House did not respond further. So they would not disclose whether or not they talked to Biden to clarify what he was trying to say. So again, what was he trying to say? Even before Thompson's revelation, the White House's characterization of Biden's wording clearly contradicted his statement. But by refusing to confirm that they had spoken with Biden after his gaffe, the already tenuous official White House clarification of Biden's comments is further undermined. It is unknown how Biden's aides could have divined his intent to know what he was thinking at the time in unwritten, off-the-cuff remarks without having spoken to him. And the White House's bungled response simply adds fuel to this fire. I don't see, again, the media will cover the Madison Square Garden rally, again, which I don't quite understand, but they'll cover that for quite some more time. I mean, this will be a regular story. I believe this is probably almost out of the news cycle already. I will say I was surprised as CNN reported on it in a way that was very negative towards Harris and Biden. There are some talking about this. How long will that last, though? Remember, we're a little less than a week out. This is where the news cycle changes as frequently as possible to benefit, in this case, Kamala Harris, and to hurt in some way the former president, Donald Trump. So I don't see this lasting too long, but I do think that quote sticks around for quite some time. When we come back, we're going to tell you what the media is saying about this. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. We'll also hear from what some Democrats had to say about it, or some Republicans had to say about it, and as well as what the former president himself had to say about the comment. We'll also tell you what the former president had to say about that comedian from Madison Square Garden. Again, the opener to a 6-hour event, but that is where the media is laser-like focused on talking about that one person. I did find it interesting that Jon Stewart had a comment saying that he finds comedian funny, and it's a comedian. That, yeah, kind of what we said on this program. Probably not the best idea to have an insult comic with a week left to go before the election, but that decision was made. But Jon Stewart saying, hey, probably not the best choice, but at the same time, the guy's funny. I'm sure that has received criticism in certain circles. There's no doubt about that. So we've got a lot left to talk about. We're just getting warmed up. I also asked this question yesterday, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it today. How do you feel less than a week out from Election Day? What are your feelings? The media is telling us that everybody's anxious and panic attacks and this and that and the other thing. But what are your thoughts? How are you feeling with a week out, a little less than a week out from Election Day? Also, if you early voted, love to hear from you on that too. All right, let's take another break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam. Contact Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs as we overlook historic Market Street, where we also happen to be broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So some of the media coverage of, and again, do you accept Biden's people, his aides, and what they're saying about, he didn't mean all of Trump supporters are garbage, just apparently that comedian? I think when you read the transcript and you watch the video, much to what Caitlin Collins had to say, it's hard to spin. On CNN's The Source, host Caitlin Collins stated that it's hard to buy the White House's attempt to clean up President Joe Biden's statement about supporters of 2024 Republican presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump, when you can listen to it for yourself. Well, really hasn't that been much of the campaign? Never mind what you're seeing and experiencing. Here's some stats that we're going to give you, or never mind what you're seeing, you're feeling. The public safety's fine, inflation's fine. Never mind if you watch the Madison Square Garden rally. Let me tell you what you should think about it, how you should feel about it. So that just another attempt. She was speaking with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who distanced himself from the comments as well. He does not seem to be buying the line either that the White House is giving. Biden saying, quote, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American." She then stated that it sounds like he's calling Trump supporters there garbage, adding, "The White House is trying to say that what President Biden was saying, they're putting an apostrophe there on supporters, saying it's the singular," I guess referring to the comedian, the supporters comments. It's hard to really look at that when you can listen to it for yourself. Yeah, putting the apostrophe wherever they want isn't making a difference from what you're actually hearing and what you're seeing when you watch that clip. So of all places, on The Source, on CNN, Caitlin Collins saying, it's hard to buy the spin when you can watch it for yourself. But I have a feeling that clip of Joe Biden saying that will not be played as frequently as the comments from the comedian opening a 6-hour event at Madison Square Garden. That's my thoughts on it. What are yours? Because I know watching just quickly, and again, anecdotal here, just quickly watching some news this morning while getting ready, I saw some reference to it. I wouldn't say it was the main focus of the broadcast, much like that comedian's comments. And if you watch, there has been a lot of, for lack of a better word, trying to cover this up, trying to downplay it. For instance, Politico is not reporting on it. We're going to tell you what J.D. Vance had to say about that. The Hill reports that Biden only, quote, appeared to compare them to garbage. Now, despite Biden's clear wording, this is how The Hill reports it. Quote, "The only garbage I see," this is what Biden says, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters." We've mentioned it a few times. The outlet used the word appears or appeared throughout the story, including in the headline, to reference his attack on Trump supporters. So now Harris's campaign, as you know, has latched on to that comedian's joke in the waning days of the campaign, with the establishment media focusing on their remarks, trying to, again, paint this rally for something that it wasn't. The Hill alone has published, get this, double-digit stories on comedian, what's his first name? Tony Hinchcliffe, since Sunday night. So The Hill alone has published double-digit stories on that comedian's comment. And yet the story that they did to report on Biden calling Trump supporters garbage continues to say throughout the piece, appears or appeared to say that. Again, they're hoping you didn't see the clip. They're hoping that you won't do the research. You won't read the transcript. Senator J.D. Vance tweeting out, will the networks that obsessively covered a joke from a comedian at a Trump rally cover the fact that the Kamala Harris campaign is insulting half of the country? Will they even report honestly on this disgusting behavior from our present leadership? And he was specifically referencing not just The Hill, not just the media in general, but also from Politico, saying, Politico's characterization of the Biden statement was that he had said the only garbage was the hatred of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. Completely taking really what was done during 60 Minutes, which is completely changing the wording of what Biden said to make it look more favorable to Biden. Politico's cover-up is an acknowledgement of just how damaging Biden's comments have already been in comparison, as many are making the comparison with Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables. So after J.D. Vance tweeted out the transcript, tweeted out, I know it's axed, whatever, what Biden had said, he included a screenshot showing how Politico chopped up Biden's quote that read, quote, Biden, in a Zoom call from the organization Voto Latino, said the only garbage, quote, was the hatred of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. So J.D. Vance asks the question, do Jean Lemire, Alexander Burns, and Politico have an ounce of integrity? Will they correct this obvious falsehood? Falsehood? The fact that these journalists are covering for a catastrophic error from Kamala's campaign is a scandal. Again, they realize the damage that this could do. So the media, many in the media are going to try to downplay. Now, as you recall, we predicted this for a long time, but specifically at the beginning of the week, we said with a week to go for election, you're going to have a lot of focus on negatives towards Trump by the media and a lot of building up and trying to create momentum for Harris. And that's what we're seeing here. They cannot have something like this, who even some on the left are saying can be very damaging. Basically, this is the last thing in the world Harris wants right now. So they're going to have to downplay this. You will not see nearly the coverage of Biden's comments that you've seen of that comedian. And as I think former President Trump said, and I'm paraphrasing here, saying essentially, I don't even know who the guy is. I still don't know who he is. So that guy getting a lot more coverage than the current president of the United States, Joe Biden, referring to Trump supporters as garbage. Now, the Trump campaign blistered Politico, saying Politico is desperately trying to clean up Biden's disgusting comments, but they can't even do that right. Lemire's doctored transcript doesn't even match his original reporting, which also failed to capture the correct context. Watch the video, Lemire, and try again. Don Jr. ridiculed Lemire as well, pointing out that by covering up Biden's comments, it's Harris who benefits. This wasn't some accident from Politico. Leftist hack John Lemire tried to do cleanup for Team Kamala and lied about what was said to protect her. He didn't realize the video was going to come out that would expose him as a liar and Democrat propagandist. So Politico, others, some downplaying it, some calling it for what it is. We're going to continue this conversation. We're running a little late. I see some comments coming in. Thank you very much. Love to hear your thoughts. How are you feeling as we near Election Day? What are your thoughts on this comment by Biden? We are going to talk about what former President Trump thought about those comments from Biden, calling his supporters garbage, but also his comments on the comedian that the media has been focused on. And we're also going to discuss Kamala Harris's rally yesterday in Washington and just the campaigns in general. And coming up a little bit later on, again, Stacey Romeo, who's running for New York State Supreme Court. That's in the 7 o'clock hour. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. A couple comments from viewers. During the moment of silence at the rally when Kamala asked the audience to say their first name, yes, that was the other day. That was interesting. The brainwashed crowd almost woke up for a few seconds. but after her cackle magically fell back into her spell. That was an awkward, thank you, viewer, that was an awkward attempt at something, and I'm not really sure what that is. A comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. It'd be so much fun to be backstage at a liberal press room when Biden makes a statement. Just when they're about to use a comedian for an October surprise, Joe overshadows the whole narrative. It's like Joe works for the Trump campaign. Maybe that's the mental mind game that I've jokingly talked about on this program. Not jokingly, just something to think about. You know, if Trump were to win, it would just secure more of Joe's legacy. There's got to be something with Joe Biden, and because let's face it, he's been a guy, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school, that's really has a big ego. And so there's got to be something in the back of your mind that thinks, if they don't pull this off, I can go to the Democrat elites who've always undervalued me. This is in his mind, always undervalued me. I can do a see, I told you so. I was the only one that could beat Trump. Just something to think about. So that would be to that viewer's point. It's like Joe works for the Trump campaign. I don't think he does. I don't think listen, this was not what Harris wanted. I will put it that way. Former CNN political commentator Chris Cillizza said that President Joe Biden's comments branding supporters of Donald Trump garbage is an absolute nightmare for the presidential campaign of Vice President Harris. Now, he's formerly from CNN, but even on CNN this morning, you can't, weirdly enough, you can't click on articles anymore without subscribing. You can, I think you get a certain amount of free ones. I don't know how many that is because I don't go to CNN that much and I'm already out. But even they have an analysis saying Harris may face new political mess after Biden's gaffe. Now, notice how they use that word gaffe. Do you consider that a gaffe, or is it a statement that he believes? I mean, I think gaffe, especially with Biden, has been used too often to downplay the things that he said to protect him. I don't see that as a gaffe, but I'll continue here with what Chris Cillizza had to say. Biden's verbal gaffe, see, he mentions it as well, and you'll continue to see that, if that's what it was, is an absolute nightmare for Harris's campaign. This is getting more attention than Harris's closing argument speech. And I think that is a good point. In certain circles, it was getting more focus, more so of how she's going to respond, how's this going to play out, than her big speech, her big rally in Washington, D.C., where people were packed in. Again, it's Washington. I'm not really surprised by that. A lot of people in Washington stand to benefit, obviously, if Harris becomes president. But again, Chris Cillizza, and I guess I give him credit for kind of walking back instantly using the term gaffe, saying Biden's verbal gaffe, in parentheses, if that's what it was, is an absolute nightmare for Harris's campaign. This is getting more attention than Harris's closing argument speech. Now, I think that's a very good point. Some are likening it to the basket of deplorables. Josh Shapiro even walking back. We'll get to that in a moment. Even Cillizza didn't accept the spin that the White House was putting out. Now, Axios reporting that the White House did not check with Biden. Well, they wouldn't comment on whether they checked with Biden before when they released a statement saying, no, he was talking about the comedian. Well, how would they know that without talking with him, right? Also, the attempt, and this is what Cillizza had to say, also the attempt to transcribe this by the White House as supporters with that apostrophe, as opposed to supporters without, which he clearly says is laughable. Yeah, like Caitlin Collins said, it's hard to buy the spin when you can watch the video, when you can listen to it yourself. So again, it is getting a lot more attention than the Harris campaign wants, when places like CNN even have to comment on it. Now, Chris Cillizza is no longer with CNN. Let me be clear on that. But Caitlin Collins is, and whoever wrote that analysis that I cannot read on CNN, but saying that this is troubling for Harris. This is not what she wants with a week out from the election, of course, because it was said yesterday. Even Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro distanced himself from President Biden's off-the-cuff remark at a virtual campaign call. Now, Josh Shapiro, many have speculated well, there's been two different avenues that he was not chosen for vice president for Harris, the candidate, because of his Jewish faith, going back to what we had mentioned with as Van Jones put it, the marbling of anti-Semitism in the Democrat Party, and Harris not wanting to lose that voting block, I guess. But others have speculated that maybe he never wanted the job, meaning that, hey, let's see how this all works out. Shapiro, a young guy, saying, okay, if Harris wins, I'm still got a bright future. I'm young. If she loses, because remember, at the time when these decisions were being made, we had been told for 3.5 years by many Democrat insiders and even those in the media that Harris just wasn't a solid candidate for the future. Some even at the time when Biden's numbers were sinking, and this is even before the debate, saying, why don't they get Harris out of there and put somebody else more popular in to help that ticket even more in defeating Donald Trump? And that was set up until very, very recently. About so 90 days Harris has had it. So let's say 100 days. She was still being looked at as not a serious candidate, not someone that was going to lead the Democrat Party in the future. And before that, even saying that maybe Biden should replace her to get someone more popular. So let's say when this is happening, Shapiro, and just something to think about, and I love your thoughts on it. Shapiro saying, I have a bright future in this party. If I go on to a sinking ship, it's effectively over. And people are telling me Harris isn't that good of a candidate, so why would I hitch my wagon to her and be the VP? So maybe he never wanted it in the first place, because then if Harris loses, he's what most would consider, as of now, a lot can change, don't get me wrong, but he would be considered, him and Gavin Newsom, kind of the two leaders in the race to the White House in 2028. So anyway, this may be why he's distancing himself from what Joe Biden said. He was on, again, with Caitlin Collins, saying, I'm giving you my fresh reaction to it. I would never insult the good people of Pennsylvania or any Americans, even if they chose to support a candidate that I didn't support. I don't think that's where we're at today, though. I think if you look at the coverage of the Madison Square Garden rally, where they try to compare Trump supporters to Nazis. I'm not saying Josh Shapiro did. I'm saying Josh Shapiro, very reasonable statement here. I don't think everybody in his party has the same opinion. So your thoughts on it. Stay with us. We've got to take a short break. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big facts. And we are back. Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam. Visit Boss Security in Horseheads today. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Nearly done with hour number one. Hard to believe. I understand some people are having difficulty getting the program this morning, which just the fact that I'm talking about this makes no sense because those people cannot watch. So if I ask you if you're having trouble, I guess there's no sense asking because you wouldn't be watching. But I know over antenna, over the air, we are broadcasting. So we're going to keep the train rolling here. Some Republicans have responded to what Biden said, calling Trump supporters garbage, saying Joe Biden just called half of Americans garbage for supporting Donald Trump, said Representative Mike Waltz, like the dance. America, this is what Kamala Harris, Biden, and the radical left think of you. It's high time that Americans rise up and take out the trash that is the radical leftist poison in our country and vote now to make our voices heard. Senator Mike Lee saying the president calls half the country garbage. I wonder if the media will cover this with the same vigor as they did the comedian. Yes, and that's the $1 million question, but one that's easily answered. It is getting some coverage. I will not deny that. But you will have seen, just like that one piece said, The Hill had double-digit articles written about that comedian. And yet the article they wrote on Biden's comments, trying to downplay what Biden had said, trying to mislead you into thinking he said something he did not. I would say that if you question me or my thoughts on the issue, I would say then just watch the video. I would say if Caitlin Collins agrees with that statement that I just made, which is what she essentially said on her program yesterday, I think you can reasonably deduce that, yes, the video shows exactly what he said. The National Republican Congressional Committee issued a statement saying this is Joe Biden's deplorables moment. The truth is Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and House Democrats look down their nose at anyone who wants affordability, safe streets, and a secure border. Every House Democrat enabled Joe Biden's assault on the American dream, and they must condemn the president's disgusting and divisive comments immediately. Representative Jim Banks said first they called Trump supporters deplorables, then Nazis, now garbage. This is what Democrats think of you. Vote Trump. And Republican Pennsylvania Senate candidate Dave McCormick wrote, the sitting president of the United States just called half of America garbage. This is exactly the kind of rhetoric that leads to hate and violence in our country, and to come from Bob Casey's close friend and the current commander-in-chief is totally unacceptable. Now, Trump is calling for Kamala Harris to disavow Biden's insult. I don't know. Here's the problem with Harris. You would think she would be asked about this a lot, right? But I'm not sure what media availability she has between now and Tuesday, especially with this at the forefront. We know as of right now, the Joe Rogan interview did not work out because of her list of demands. And I know that sounds like a negative term, but it is a list of demands, which is you come to me and it's only an hour. And he said it doesn't work that way. So there's that. So we know that's not coming. Will she have other interviews where this will come up? I don't have an answer for that. I'm sure she'll be asked, but what her answer will be, I'm not sure. And I shouldn't even say I'm sure she'll be asked. I can't say that for certainty. The Associated Press reported, reacting to a comment calling Puerto Rico garbage at a Trump rally last weekend, Biden said the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. NBC reporter Gabe Gutierrez gave a fuller version of the quote. Donald Trump has no character. He doesn't give a, we'll say, darn about the Latino community. Just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. Politico has tried to do a spin on it. The White House is providing a different spin than Politico's spin. The Trump campaign responded with, President Trump is backed by Latinos, black voters, union workers, angel moms, law enforcement officers, Border Patrol agents, and Americans of all faiths. And Harris, Walz, and Biden have labeled these great Americans as fascists, Nazis, and now garbage. There's no way to spin it. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris don't just hate President Trump, they despise the tens of millions of Americans who support him. Kamala does not deserve 4 more years. President Trump will be a president for all Americans. The campaign also challenged Harris to disavow the remarks. Kamala Harris's governing partner just insulted tens of millions of Americans. Will Kamala apologize and disavow Joe Biden's remarks? I don't think. Well, and then they go through a list, and this is the Trump campaign, a list of critical comments in regards to what Biden said. J.D. Vance saying this is disgusting. Kamala Harris and her boss, Joe Biden, are attacking half the country. There's no excuse for this. I hope Americans reject it. Senator Marco Rubio said he's talking about the Border Patrol. He's talking about nurses. He's talking about teachers. He's talking about everyday Americans who love the country and want to dream big again. And I hope their campaign is about to apologize for what Joe Biden just said. We are not garbage. We are patriots who love America. So we'll wait to see what... Well, this is what Axios is reporting that Harris's aides said that Biden was both unpopular and undisciplined, but she herself had not responded as of last night. So that's what, again, Harris aides are saying this anonymously behind closed doors, that Biden was both unpopular and undisciplined. All right, we got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Getting interesting. A little less than a week before Election Day. What are your thoughts on the garbage comment? We are going to talk about that comedian very quickly. We also got some things in general about both campaigns. Stay with us. Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam this morning. Really appreciate it. Well, we've got a couple of comments, and I missed a few there because I was talking off the air. Let's get back to the live from the Hesselson studio camera here. This is from a viewer. I must be legal garbage since I am a citizen and voted for Trump. Thank you very much. A comment from a different viewer. Good morning. Hey, good morning. Just a quick comment. What future does the Democrat Party see? Where are they trying to take this country? Personally, I don't see what they envision. Harris has given us no idea of what she intends to do. But I do see Trump's clearly stated vision for America, and I'm 100% on board with him. Thank you very much. Now, Trump did weigh in on the garbage issue. He said, who was it that told him? It was at a rally, and I saw the clip, but it was early this morning. He was, oh yeah, I thought so. He was informed by Marco Rubio what Joe Biden had said, calling Trump supporters garbage. He said, wow, that's terrible. Even invoking Hillary Clinton's infamous deplorables remark. Garbage, though, he said, when referencing the deplorables, garbage I think is worse, but he doesn't know. You have to please forgive him. Please forgive him for not knowing what he said. These people are terrible, terrible, terrible to say a thing like that. But he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't. And I'm convinced that he likes me more than he likes Kamala, but that's a terrible thing. So we're going to tell you what, I know I'm running late here. So many comments coming in. Thank you so much. I know we are having issues with some of the service providers, and there's no sense me mentioning that because those people that have those service providers cannot hear me. But I appreciate you, everybody who joined us this morning. One thing I will highlight, since we're having issues with some service providers, we are going to hear from Stacey Romeo today. But I will also be rebroadcasting that, and I'll let you know when, only because it's only fair. She came in from the Rochester area to do the interview, and I want her to get full coverage. So we'll probably, if everything's back up and running, we will broadcast it before Joe Semplinsky comes in tomorrow to the studio. But that's just a quick announcement from a little behind-the-scenes technical stuff going on here. So today, Stacey Romeo, coming up in the next hour. Tomorrow, former Congressman Joe Semplinsky. On Friday, Matt Bizzetti, he's running for Chemung County Family Court, will be joining us. And after that, in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Matt McCarthy, who is the current Corning City Judge and Steuben County Court and Family Court Judge. He is now running for that position, which is the Steuben County Court and Family Court. And then on Monday, we will be hearing from Bobby Ann Cox about Proposition 1. And of course, I'll be asking Joe Semplinsky tomorrow about Prop 1 as well. We'll also be asking him, because he is, if you're not aware, he is the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. We'll also ask him his thoughts on early voting. And I want to hear how your early voting experience went, if that's the way you decided to go with it. I'd love to hear from you. All right, stay with us. Hour number 1 in the books, and we'll be right back with hour number 2 after this. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Sorry, just reading all these comments. Thank you for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We were talking this morning about Joe Biden's comments that Trump supporters are garbage. Axios is reporting it wasn't him, but his aides are trying to kind of walk back that comment, trying to put a spin on that comment. CNN's Caitlin Collins and others saying you can't really spin it when you can watch the video. So it's an interesting and scenario that Kamala Harris does not want to be involved in right now. I don't know if she'll ever have to respond to those comments. I'm not sure how this all plays out. As of last night, she had not commented on it. She doesn't give a lot of interviews. Well, the media will do a good job in their mind, whether or not it's effective, in burying the story very quickly in the media cycle, because you'll have, Madison Square Garden, for example, hundreds of stories, right, about that comedian. You'll have a few stories on this, maybe a few comments on the news about this, but they know that they basically only have to. I mean, they'll still get some traction elsewhere, and people will still talk about it, but they'll hope that this is out of the news cycle. 24 hours, maybe you get 2 days out of it. And I hope I'm wrong, because I think it needs to be told. I just know that they're not going to let this play out until next Tuesday. That's for sure. They'll find another fabricated scandal, fabricated October surprise for Trump, like they did with the Madison Square Garden rally. So only time will tell how this all plays out specifically. Now, as I mentioned, Trump did react to the garbage comments, just saying, hey, we're not, Rubio, told him about it, saying, he's talking about everyday Americans who love their country and want to dream big again and support you, Mr. President. And I hope the Harris campaign is about to apologize for what Joe Biden has said. We are not garbage. We are patriots. We love America. Thank you for running. That's Marco Rubio saying that to former President Trump. And that's when Trump said, wow, that's terrible. So you have to remember Hillary Clinton. She said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable. Garbage, I think, is worse. Vivek Ramaswamy. I know we've got a lot of Ramaswamy fans out there watching this program. He weighed in on this on Hannity's program, Fox News Channel's Hannity, saying, here's the October surprise. It just arrived. This is the basket of deplorables moment. That's what Hillary said in 2016 that tanked her campaign. Well, that is the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris moment right now. I'm a little bit more cynical about this one in the following way. It might look like Joe Biden's usual cognitive deficit kicked in, but the reality is we know his family is probably rooting for Trump, not Kamala Harris, to win because they feel vengeful about how they were treated. So if you are in their shoes, that comment might tank, but move the motivation to one side. But regardless of motivations, it is a welcome October surprise because let's take a big step back and look at what's going on here. Again, if you're just joining us, Vivek Ramaswamy. The wheels are coming off the car. They're spiraling. And now you see the accusations, the other side being Hitler or piles of garbage. You're going to hear a lot about threats to democracy in the next week. They're flailing, Sean. Understand, Americans are not falling for their trick anymore. Donald Trump has a record that he is running on. They are frustrated by it. And it is, in some ways, I think, a beautiful thing for our side to watch this completely come undone. Again, how long do you predict this will be in the news cycle? How long the media has already tried to cover it up because they know how bad it looks. Yes, there's still time to put on some campaign ads and the like, but they are going to attempt to downplay this as much as possible. Yes, there was some coverage last night, and there'll be some this morning, but they will do the best they possibly can to move on from it. And I believe you'll go back to hearing more about Madison Square Garden, more about that comedian. Now, whether or not it will keep in the news cycle if she responds, this is going to be interesting. Now, I'd also mentioned that I would bring this up earlier, and please feel free to weigh in on any of this at any time. Trump has disavowed that comedian for what he said at the rally. He said, I have no idea who he is. He told Sean Hannity. Somebody said there was a comedian that joked about Puerto Rico or something, and I have no idea who he is, never saw him, never heard of him, and don't want to hear of him. They put a comedian in, which everybody does. You throw comedians in, you don't vet them and go crazy. It's nobody's fault, he said, but somebody said some bad things. Now what they've done is take somebody that has nothing to do with the party, has nothing to do with us, said something, and they try to make a big deal. But I don't know who it is. I don't even know who put him in, and I can't imagine it's a big deal. I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president. Well, they are trying to make that the October surprise, and yes, that term is being used too much. It's over any little thing. But this is what they were hoping to make it, and they've done an effective job with it, playing it nonstop, playing the clips. I know that you will, and I think it's a pretty safe bet to say you will have seen that comedian's statement more than you'll see in the next week Joe Biden's statement calling Trump supporters garbage. Hannity said, do you wish he wasn't there? He said, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but I don't want anybody making nasty jokes or stupid jokes. Probably he shouldn't have been there. Fair. Now, after that, former President Trump received a full-throated endorsement from Puerto Rico's Republican shadow senator on Tuesday as he distanced himself from that comedian. Quote, I strongly and fully support and endorse Donald J. Trump to be our 47th president, to make America great again, and of course to make Puerto Rico shine again, said Zoraida Buxo. Trump later brought Buxo back on stage during his remarks in the key swing state of Pennsylvania. We need this man back in the White House, the shadow senator said. We need this man to be commander-in-chief. He will make us feel safe, and he will protect us. Buxo was one of 3 Hispanic speakers who graced the stage in Allentown, a majority Latino city about 60 miles north of Philadelphia, the other being local business leader Tim Ramos and Senator Marco Rubio. His endorsement follows the controversy over Tony Heathcliff's comparison. You know all about that. And Trump has since distanced himself from that comedian. But anyway, worth mentioning. Trump did admit that it was perhaps a mistake to allow an insult comedian on stage at the New York City event. Yes, not the best idea when you are a week out, but what was done is done, and he said, shouldn't have been there. It was a mistake. Now let's take a look, and I know we're jumping around a lot. We've talked quite a bit this morning about Joe Biden saying that Trump supporters are garbage. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how long will it be in the news cycle, how will the media cover it. So far, covering it, I would say fairly enough, but not as full-throated as they covered the Madison Square Garden rally. But just any kind of even somewhat negative coverage is pretty surprising, especially this time of year. But yesterday, and it did to, who was it that said it? Chris Cillizza, who used to work on CNN, having a good point that comment from Biden is really outshining Kamala Harris's final message to voters. She had the big rally with some numbers, and I got to be honest, I used to trust Drudge Report, and I haven't for the last couple of years, and it's not just because, Matt Drudge obviously doesn't like Donald Trump. That's fine. I like to see all sides and all coverage. But some of the places he even cites now, or some of the websites he links to, are just too much. But one report saying that there were 75,000 people at her rally in Washington, which to me comes as no surprise. I knew a Washington rally would be huge. There's a lot of people in Washington invested with keeping the status quo, with keeping things normal in Washington. The overspending, the bureaucracy. So that comes as no surprise to me. But the speech itself repeated many of the themes and policy proposals Harris has made on the campaign trail. But the address was heavily promoted, commanding the attention of major cable news networks. What's the chances? What's the chances that the major news networks would want to be there? And finished up just as Game 4 of the World Series was about to begin. Harris acknowledged that many of you are still getting to know who I am, as she used her speech to talk about personal anecdotes of her mother, while making the case that her presidency would be different from that of Joe Biden because the challenges that we face will be different. Obviously, she was not drawing a comparison. She was highlighting the fact that she was at the spot that Trump spoke on January 6th. That was the main focus of this rally, in a way, to show what she believes is a difference, trying to continue to bring up January 6th with Trump, and to say that she was going to be a unifying president, even though at the same time her and the party had been calling, now Trump supporters garbage. That's going to be tough to unify from someone calling you garbage. I don't know how quickly you want to be friends with that person. But also comparing Trump supporters to Nazis, to fascists. So I don't know how that's a unity message. I don't know how that's a unifying message. But that is what Harris is attempting to do with that rally. And that's not going to be her last rally, keep in mind. But I do like the fact that Drudge, and this is actually from, I think, Deadline, and other outlets do this for Trump too, so don't get me wrong, but that they are quoting Harris's campaign on the number of people at the rally, saying that 75,000 people were gathered, with an overflow outside the security perimeter near the Washington Monument. Those figures have not been confirmed with law enforcement. During her speech, Harris sought to reach out to Republicans, which may be critical in what is being called a margin of error race. She seized on Trump's own rhetoric, including his use of the term enemy from within, to talk about political rivals, while casting her presidency as one that would unite. So, enemy from within, but yet, okay, your boss, who you're on the ticket with, Joe Biden, considering half of America, especially if you're saying here, margin of error, half of America is garbage. But every time Trump says something that they can spin into a negative statement, it's nonstop. It's nonstop media coverage. This, they actually try to downplay. It's a very frustrating but fascinating look into how the media tries to paint the narrative, tries to control the narrative. Now, yesterday we had that report from Axios saying that it's to be accepted that the media can no longer control the narrative the way they once did. And Jeff Bezos had that piece saying that the media is no longer trusted by the American people. The reason that is because you will see 3 to 4 days nonstop coverage of a comedian's remarks, a comedian that was opening a 6-hour rally. And you will see an attempt anyway to downplay Biden's comments and also keep it out of the news cycle as quickly as possible. Get it out of the news cycle as quickly as possible. We have to take a short break. Coming up in just a little bit, we are going to hear from Stacey Romeo, running for New York State Supreme Court. So stay with us. That's not after this break, but the break after that. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. That was the Boss Security roof cam. Contact Boss Security in Horseheads today. So Kamala Harris claims during that rally yesterday that Donald Trump, quote, has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. Now, this is, I do find this interesting because you think Donald Trump being prosecuted numerous times by Democrat lawmakers, that this wouldn't be the argument, but it's been the argument for really since the beginning. But this idea is enemies list. And I don't know, where does that go back to? I know they try to say it with Nixon, but it had to be before Nixon even, that they always try to throw out this idea that there's an enemies list. But it's just hard to accept the statement that he's going after people when there's been so much lawfare used against him, isn't it? I don't know. It's an interesting spin on things. It's kind of that projection of we do it, but it's them kind of idea. Harris made the allegation as she urged listeners to reject Trump's chaos. And that's another thing that I've always found interesting, that they talk about the Trump chaos. The chaos very often the media creates, or Democrats in Washington create, whether it's the media with the Russian scandals and things like that, constantly bring it up. And then they say, do you want any more of that chaos? You say, what, the chaos that you brought up, that you started and continue to bring up? I don't understand. It's almost... If they don't vote for Trump, that's almost rewarding bad behavior by creating the chaos that the media has done such a good job of creating. But she called the Republican nominee a petty tyrant and a wannabe dictator. This does definitely sound like the party of unity, the same party that called Trump supporters garbage, deplorables, bitter clingers, and just recently after the Madison Square Garden rally, and a little before that, Nazis and fascists. But again, What a wonderful message of unity that we heard. Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute, Harris claimed, despite no reporting on the existence of such a list. On day one, if elected, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When elected, I will walk in with a to-do list full of priorities of what I will get done for the American people, she told the crowd, which estimated to be roughly 40,000 strong, but her campaign has set up to 75,000 strong. Trump, 78, suggested last week he may pardon retiring President Biden's son Hunter, and has noted in several recent public appearances that he opposed prosecuting Hillary Clinton during his term in office. And I think that's a very good point. I was actually glad that he said that. He's saying it's not good for the country, and it wasn't good for the country when they went after him. So I do think that is an important message that he's been making. I think it's getting overlooked, again, because they don't want to give him coverage that they could see as benefiting him. But for Harris to say that about he has an enemies list he's going to prosecute, that he wants to prosecute, again, this man has been prosecuted perhaps more than anybody. I know that's his line, right? More than Alphonse Capone, he always says. But it's very hard to take them at their word when they say these things, when they have been doing these things with the lawfare, and when he said that he would be open to pardoning Hunter Biden. But continuing, Trump has denounced what he called the weaponization of the Justice Department in the Biden-Harris administration, which filed two unprecedented pending criminal cases against him. Quote, unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table, Harris said. Which, by the way, it should be noted, first of all, when Biden says half Americans are garbage, I don't know how much they're going to want to sit at that table. But also, it's worth mentioning that this rally in Washington, Biden did not attend. Now, his reasoning when asked by a reporter was that that's her moment. But you would still think being right there, that would just be clearly a, for lack of a better word, opener. I know we use these terms like they're concerts or something, but an opener to kind of introduce her. But Harris went on saying he says that one of his highest priorities is to set free the violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers on January 6th. though Trump has not specifically said he would release rioters who attacked police as opposed to nonviolent members of the mob that stormed the Capitol back in 2021. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. This is what Harris said in her, again, unifying speech. Harris made people he calls the enemy from within. Harris made a number of additional factually contested claims during her remarks, including saying that Trump has shown his contempt for our nation's heroes, calling them suckers and losers, citing a disputed Atlantic magazine article from 2020 whose central premise about a canceled French cemetery visit was debunked by Navy records. Autocrats like Putin and Kim Jong-un are rooting for him in this election, said Harris, whom Putin actually publicly endorsed. If you recall, Putin had publicly endorsed Harris, though the sincerity of that endorsement has been questioned. And this is just a little fact-checking that the media won't do on Harris' speech. Politicians have got to stop treating immigration as an issue to scare up votes in an election, Harris said at one point. It's time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It's time for a new generation of leadership in America. Harris also spoke of policies that she said would reduce financial pressure on middle-class families after high inflation and elevated interest rates under her and Biden's administration. Quote, Donald Trump would deliver tax cuts to his billionaire donors. I would deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class. I wonder how her billionaire donors are going to make. Because there's a laundry list of them. Harris has proposed an expanded child tax credit and endorsed Trump's proposal to end federal income taxes on tips. Harris has not endorsed Trump's proposal to eliminate taxes on overtime pay and Social Security benefits, or his proposal to make car loan interest tax deductible and IVF treatments free through either an insurance mandate or government subsidies. She also vowed to cut the red tape to build new housing to lower costs, a proposal she and Trump agree upon, and slammed Trump's plan for new tariffs on foreign goods as akin to a new national sales tax, which Trump has disputed, calling tariffs a negotiation tactic. Harris spoke as Trump campaigned in swing state Pennsylvania. Biden watched his would-be successor's speech from inside the White House. The outgoing president, who was forced by fellow Democrats to relinquish the party's nomination in July, told reporters earlier yesterday that he wasn't going to be there because, quote, it's for her. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Stacey Romeo. She's running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Let me find out which break I'm on. I should have checked that before we went. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in that studio this morning, Monroe County Family Court Judge and Acting State Supreme Court Judge Stacey Romeo. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot to cover, but this is a judicial race, so it's not going to be too specific, but let's start with your background.
Well, currently I sit as the Monroe County Family Court Judge for the past 8 years. In that capacity, I'm also the supervising judge for all the family court judges in all 8 counties of the 7th Judicial District. I'm also a acting Supreme Court judge. I have been for the past 6 years. I've been in the legal community for close to 30 years now, and I've held a lot of hats in addition to what I've been doing the past 8 years. Yeah. I was a town attorney for the 2 towns in Monroe County. I had my own private practice. I was a law clerk in Supreme Court and in family court.
Wow.
And in that capacity, I have sat as a domestic violence hearing officer, a small claims hearing officer, a matrimonial referee, and a foreclosure referee.
Wow.
So I've done a lot.
You have done a lot.
I've done a lot.
So you're that busy. I know you're really active in the community, too. Where do you find the time to run and do? Why did you run? You've got enough going on.
Well, it's important. As you can see from my history, community service has been kind of paramount in my life leading up to what I do today. It's something that I teach my children. We have to give back to our community. It's not enough just to hold a job. Right. We have to make sure that we give back to what we get out of our community. So it's important for me to continue to do that for the next, hopefully, 14 years.
Yes, 14-year term.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it like that, the community, because one of the goals of the show, when we brought it up from the beginning, was to kind of bring back that sense of community. And it seems to be lacking in recent years. And I don't know, people can blame COVID or whatever, but there's not that support like there used to be. So I'm so glad that you said that. Thanks for saying that. We're trying to promote community on this program. You mentioned 6 years as acting Supreme Court judge. Was there anything about those 6 years that surprised you?
I think not necessarily surprising, but as I sit hearing family court matters and criminal matters as the youth part judge,
Yeah.
it's a nice change of pace to do some other types of
Sure.
legal work in my judicial capacity. So not necessarily surprising, I would say refreshing
Yeah.
to do something different than what I had been doing every day.
And how did you prepare for that role going from family court to Supreme Court?
I think it was natural for me, given my background,
Yeah.
that I did work in Supreme Court as a law clerk for many years, and actually held my own dockets as those referees for many years. So actually, it wasn't very difficult for me to do that at all.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the 7th Judicial District. So how many miles have you put on your car?
Too many, if you
Yeah.
ask my husband.
Yeah, no
Good
kidding.
thing we bought our car and did not lease our car.
Okay, that's good.
We travel every day.
Wow.
Every day.
Well, you've got Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben. If that's not enough, Wayne and Yates counties. That
Yes.
seems impossible.
It is nothing is impossible
No.
if you put your mind to it and you're dedicated. So we travel to all those counties after work and on the weekends. I mean, everyone kind of forgets that I have a day job.
Right, that's
kind
what
of an important day job. But I would like to say more important than my day job, though, is my mom job
Yeah,
and my
sure.
wife job.
Absolutely.
And I put it in that order.
Yeah.
Most important are my children. My husband knows he takes second billing to the kids.
Yeah.
But it's really important to me to make sure that my children know that I'm still their mom, no matter what is going on
Right.
in our worlds and wherever they are and whatever I'm doing. So that's the order that I like to keep everybody in.
Well, what do the kids think of you running?
They love it.
Oh, do they really?
They love it. They were all there for my first campaign, and
Yeah.
they're a little bit older now. My daughter is almost 22.
Okay.
And she's in law school herself.
Oh, wow.
I have a son who's 18 and is away at college,
Yeah.
and then I have an 11-year-old who's in 6th grade. And they're used to the campaign trail.
Yeah.
If they weren't helping me, they were helping other candidates.
Oh, okay.
And so they are very excited knowing that this is hopefully my last race. But they're really excited to know that their mom is running for Supreme Court and is making a difference in our community. They're very proud of me, and
that's great.
they've been great helpers.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite, because they don't sign up for it, right? You're the one that signs up
They
for it.
don't
So it's
sign
great
up
that
for
they embrace it.
But I have to tell you, especially obviously the older children, they're both eligible to vote.
Right.
They have gotten their friends, making sure that they are all registered and have their absentee ballots.
That's great.
Because they're both away at school, so I'm constantly getting little messages from their friends. I just voted for you. They send me,
that nice?
the picture of them at the mailbox. I'm voting for you today.
Oh, that's fun.
So I think it's important not only that clearly that they're voting for me,
Right.
but it's important that they understand what their civic duty is and that they're spreading that to all of their friends, and knowing that it's important from the top race all the way down. People kind of forget how important it is for your local races, but especially your judicial races. We make a huge impact that people probably aren't aware of every day,
Yes.
and that it's important that every vote counts for every single race.
Do you find that it's difficult to get attention on your campaign because everybody's talking about the national level?
I think at the local level, people are really understanding that judicial races make a difference. I'm telling folks all the time that if you don't like what you're reading in the paper about
Right.
policies that are made, and again, I can't comment on policies, but what I can say is if you don't like things that are happening, chances are someone's going to bring a lawsuit about it.
Right.
So it's important to make sure that you have the right judges in place to make those decisions that will impact the larger issues in our community and in our country.
And that's why, and you hit on that too, something we've made a kind of a cornerstone of this program is to try to interview as many guests as possible, because it's getting tougher and tougher to find out about candidates. And you can go to websites, of course, which are very helpful, and yours actually electjudgeromeo.org. But the days of nonstop coverage of the local races they're gone, long gone.
Right. If you watch the news, it's all about the national race. And obviously, it's very important.
Yes.
This is a very important year.
Oh, yeah.
But again, every election is important. And I don't necessarily feel neglected, but I've taken it upon myself to educate voters as I go along the way. Been campaigning now probably about 250 days.
Wow.
So started in February, and we're under 2 weeks now, so we're pretty excited. That
is wow. When you think about it. So we were talking about how large the 7th Judicial District is. Do you find it? How do you campaign when it's that big? Does that make sense? I mean, how do you? It's not knocking on doors; it would be impossible.
It is not a door-to-door race. Although it's great meeting voters, I think the better use of time for me has been finding community groups and finding folks in each county who will tell me what the important issues are that I can't really address issues, but where I can be, that folks might be congregating, events I can attend to meet greater populations of people, just to get my message out as to who I am and why I think I'm the best qualified candidate.
And when you're talking to voters, what are they saying to you specifically? What are their concerns?
I think people are concerned, basically, that not enough people are going to vote this year.
Oh, yeah, that is
and
true.
I would concur,
Yes.
right? I obviously, selfishly, I
Yes.
need everybody to go out and vote, and vote for Judge Romeo.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that people are concerned that either you don't like who's out there to vote for, or it's a done deal one way or the other, or why does my vote really matter? So just trying to get the message out. It's important to vote. Please vote.
Yes.
Please vote.
Absolutely. It's very important. And like you said, the local is what really affects your day-to-day life. So would you explain the race a little bit, just so when people go to the ballot box or early vote, which starts on October 26th, what should they know?
There are 2 spots for Supreme Court, and there are 4 candidates running. So it's a race where you should cast 2 votes.
Okay.
Obviously, I think your number 1 vote should be for Judge Romeo.
That makes it easy.
Stacey Romeo will be on the ballot. I always say I should change my first name to Judge.
Yeah.
But it'll say Stacey Romeo on the ballot. But then you get the opportunity to vote for a second candidate as well. So make sure that you don't skip over that line.
Right, yeah.
And that you vote for 2 candidates.
And that's it gets confusing because some people don't know that you can vote for 2, and that's why I wanted to
Right.
hit that home, and we've been talking about a lot on the program. Look for that little thing that says vote for 2 and then vote for 2, right?
Right.
So again, 6 years on the Supreme Court, what do you think some of the biggest issues you will face in the next 14 years if you're reelected?
I think, obviously, COVID really was a huge impact for many, many reasons. But if we look at the microcosm of the judicial system, it had a great impact on us. And we're still digging our way out of how cases were handled. We've really come a long way in our 7th Judicial District, where we don't have the backlog that you might hear about on the news.
Yeah.
That even nationally, but definitely downstate, there still is some backlog they're digging out of. But going forward, we have to figure out a way to embrace some of the things we learned from COVID
Yes.
and how to integrate that in, but making sure that there's some civility back in the court system. We've been talking about that a little bit outside of this broadcast, where folks got comfortable doing everything virtually.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
some of the civility and some of
That's interesting,
the
yeah.
important, the grandeur of going into the courthouse
Yeah,
has been taken away.
that's true.
And the respect for judges in the judicial system, I've seen some denigration of that. So I'm hoping that we bring that back in to the forefront going forward.
That makes sense because it's so much easier behind a screen, right? To be rude in a way or not have the respect for the office if you're in your pajamas at your house, right? That's
Right.
interesting. I didn't really think of that.
Right.
And there is something about going into an amazing courtroom and that kind of awe feeling that you have, right?
And it's more than that. A lot of things happen in the courthouse.
yeah.
People like to try to work on how to settle their cases. How do we get things done? It's a lot more difficult to do that on the phone, behind a screen.
Yes.
It's that person-to-person contact that I think really makes an impact going forward when you're in the court system.
So is a lot still done virtually?
It depends on the court.
Okay.
In my court, I like everything in person.
Sure.
I do some things virtually because there are some benefits to having things virtual. But some pieces of the court system are still virtual more than in person. But I find a benefit of finding an integration of both.
What do you look forward to the most in the next 14 years if you are successful? Excuse me.
Well, I think at this point, since I've pretty much done everything there is to do in the court system, I'm looking forward to really not necessarily shedding all the hats, but honing my skills and making sure that I can make the most positive impact in the Supreme Court that I can. It'll be my last race. I can retire from this position.
Yeah.
So there's no worrying about what I'm going to do next because I've reached the pinnacle of my career, in my opinion. So I'm excited to make more of a positive impact than hopefully I already have made going forward.
And I talk about this with all the judicial candidates, depending on whatever level. Isn't it weird that you have 14 years where you can't talk politics, or in your case, 6 years where you can't talk politics? Probably your whole really life you can't talk politics, except for this really small window.
Right.
And you still can't talk about it, but you have to have an R or a D next to your name. Of course,
Right.
you're Republican. That's got to be kind of weird, but it also gets you out of a lot of chicken dinners and during election season, right?
It is, it's interesting, and it is good because judges should not be talking about
I agree.
not only what their personal feelings are on cases, but politics as well. Because when you have a case before me, you don't want to think, well, she's going to be biased because I heard her say this on, Big Fox
Right.
TV one day, right? Because judges cannot and should not be biased. My personal feelings do not come into play. No. It's really a mere application of the law.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that we don't have politics in the political system when you're campaigning.
Do you think there'll ever be a time where they don't make you run as in a party?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so.
And it's kind of a shame in so many ways.
Yeah, we talk about what would be a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's rock, paper, scissors would be a great idea. I don't
Make
know.
things a lot easier.
Right? Other than that, I really don't have any good ideas.
No. It's a tough question. It's a $1 million question.
Right.
So I normally ask where people can find out more, but I've already said electjudgeromeo.org to find out all the information about your campaign. I know it's different. I can't even ask how people can help, right? Like how they can help your campaign?
I can't, I guess, make sure that you come out there and vote.
Yes.
And I would say this is an important race. It's an important race for our community. Obviously, it's an important race for me and for my family.
Of course.
We have invested a lot of time into this, but it's my career, right? And this is the pinnacle of my career.
Yeah.
And Supreme Court is not a place for on-the-job training.
Right. And just before we go, in closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or before they go to the ballot on November 5th?
Well, again, if you want someone who can do the job without the on-the-job training and not take a chance, they should vote for Stacey Romeo, who has a proven track record of doing the right thing all day, every day in my courtroom, and that's what you're going to get for the next 14 years.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, coming all the way to the studio. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me.
Good luck. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Thank you again to Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs as we look at our beautiful view of Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio on Market Street this morning. Oh, interesting. Yes, obviously all morning we've been talking about the garbage comment by Joe Biden. We've been still talking about the Madison Square Garden rally. But this is interesting after she had a big rally yesterday in Washington, no surprise. And I had heard rumors of this. I had former coworkers. One had called me that now works in North Carolina saying that Harris had withdrawn some of the ad money that they were spending, her campaign was spending at that person's station. And now we are learning that Kamala Harris surrenders in North Carolina by withdrawing nearly $2 million in planned ad spending from the state. And the canceled ad buys by Harris in North Carolina suggests that her team believes, given polling data and early voting data, that the Tar Heel state is no longer in play for her. Very interesting. That's one of the things that comes out later in the season when you start to hear about certain states where it's a smart political move, but relocate certain money in states that you have a better chance of winning. Donald Trump saying about Harris that she is running a campaign of absolute hate and her divisive rhetoric towards him is shameful and really inexcusable after facing 2 assassination attempts in recent months. This was yesterday morning at Mar-a-Lago. She's running on a campaign of demoralization and really a campaign of destruction. But really, perhaps more than anything else, is a campaign of hate and a campaign of absolute hate. It'll be interesting as now that obviously the tie-in with Joe Biden saying that Trump supporters, half of America essentially, is garbage. But Trump also argued And you're not going to like my next segment, so I'm going to leave on this note, because I shouldn't say that. But the next segment is going to be showing you some of the criticism of Trump from the media, but it's important to get to all sides. But Trump argued Hillary Clinton is, quote, much smarter and lies less than Kamala Harris. This was in Allentown yesterday. Hillary Clinton is much smarter than Kamala Harris, but she suffers from a major case of Trump derangement syndrome. She's a real liar, saying of Harris, she's worse than crooked Hillary. Hillary used to lie a lot, but she's nothing compared to Kamala. On that note, we're going to tell you what some other people have had to say about the Trump campaign. If you want to weigh in on the garbage statement, you absolutely can. We'll see how long that news cycle goes. But right now, playing a little catch up. And again, thank you to our guest, Stacey, Romeo, coming in from the Rochester area. Great to hear from her. Really appreciate it. Some of you know, as I made the announcement, that some service providers are having issues getting Fox on the air. So over the antenna or over the air, signal has been fine, but there's been other people that have missed out on the opportunity to catch that interview. So I will be rebroadcasting it, if everything's back up and running, tomorrow before Joe Sempolinski joins us. If not, we can't squeeze it in Friday. I'll have to play it on Monday, but I want to give her another bite at the apple, so to speak, because it's only fair to get that message out to everybody for if nothing else, for her taking the time to join us for that 15-minute interview and driving all the way from Rochester. And I do appreciate it, and I appreciate every guest that has been on this season, not just the last couple months, but the whole time on the show, but specifically the candidates that took the time out to talk to the viewers about their campaigns. I really do appreciate it. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Thank you again to Boss Security for providing this roof cam. Beautiful view. Call Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us. So Nikki Haley, for whatever reason, decided that this was the right time to be critical of the Trump campaign. She criticized the bromance and masculinity stuff on display at Madison Square Garden. During an appearance on Special Report on Fox News, Nikki Haley said, I think they need to do what they need to do to get across the finish line. I just think that they need to focus primarily on who it is that they are talking to. You've got Americans who are absolutely going to vote for Trump. You've got Americans who are absolutely not going to vote for Trump. And then you've got a percentage in the middle who like Trump's policies but don't like his style. That is what they need to focus on. So when you look at these things, it has got to be a story of addition. This is not a time to have anyone criticize Puerto Rico or Latinos. This is not a time for them to get overly masculine with this bromance thing that they've got going on. 53% of the electorate are women. Women will vote. They care about how they are being talked to, and they care about the issues. They need to remember that this is a time of discipline, and this is a time, of addition. Asked specifically about the comedian, because of course that's going to be the follow-up question, about the comedian that opened the rally. She said, I think it's harmful. I mean, look, there's no reason to have a comedian at an election campaign event that had so much energy and so many good issues. Why have a comedian that separates people? This isn't about people being sensitive. I mean, Puerto Ricans, that's personal for them. They take that personally. So they were right to denounce a comedian. They need to go and tell Puerto Ricans how much, they do value them. They need to tell Latinos that. But they also need to look at how they are talking about women. I mean, the bromance and the masculinity stuff. I mean, it borders on edgy to the point, and it's going to make women uncomfortable. Now, continuing, just to show you some comments and some of the things that are coming out about the Trump campaign. Did you see George W. Bush's daughter, Barbara, is going to hit the campaign trail for Kamala Harris? Now, this has been a common theme where, and there's something to be said about the kind of the establishment Republicans coming out against Trump. They're one of the reasons why many people supported Trump originally, being told that, Mitt Romney's the only way we can win, McCain's the only way we can win, out of order here, of course. And then the last time it was Jeb Bush's the only way we can beat Hillary. And that's when a lot of Republicans threw their hands up and said, no, it's time for something different so we don't keep losing. So it's not a surprise some of the people. Dick Cheney was a little bit of a surprise, but we know how Liz Cheney has been in the kind of the ego there and the vindictiveness there. But this was a little bit of a surprise. Barbara Pierce Bush, the daughter of former President George W. Bush and granddaughter of former President George H.W. Bush, which that should go without saying, spent time over the past weekend in Pennsylvania on the campaign trail for Harris, saying it was inspiring to join friends and meet voters with the Harris Walls campaign in Pennsylvania this weekend. I'm hopeful they'll move our country forward and protect women's rights. She joins other high-profile members of the Republican establishment who have come out in opposition to former President Trump in support of Harris. That, of course, includes Dick Cheney. And there's a piece, and Mike, how am I doing on time? Sorry. Mike Pence, though not completely critical of Trump, he did talk about the Trump campaign. He said, to be honest with you, I always thought he, meaning Donald Trump, this is Mike Pence, would come around to see that he had been misinformed about my authority and duty that day, meaning January 6th. But that was not to be, and as time went on, he returned to much of the rhetoric that preceded that day, and so we've gone our separate ways. So, and I was trying to find the exact quote here where he talked about, here it is. I haven't endorsed our ticket. I have real concerns about the direction of the Republican Party today. So that is Mike Pence. So we've got some last minute waves coming in here. There's a few more on this. Let's take a break and then we'll be back and wrap things up on this edition. Less than 1 week till Election Day. How you feeling? Stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back. The Boss Security Roof Cam. Thank you to Boss. Visit them today in Horseheads. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. J. Michael Luddig, who was appointed by George H.W. Bush and served on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit from 1991 to 2006, has an opinion piece. And obviously, these are the kind of pieces that the New York Times and others, and this is coming specifically from the New York Times, are chomping at the bit for. My fellow Republicans, it's time to say enough with Trump. And it's about a 3-page piece here. And this is somewhat typical of the news cycle around this time. Ms. Harris is the only candidate who can be trusted to honor the president's sacred obligation to America's democracy, constitution, and rule of law. The vice president understands and cares about what Donald Trump does not. She calls on Americans to stand up for the rule of law, for our democratic ideal, and for the Constitution of the United States. She believes we have the power to chart a new way forward, one that is worthy of the magnificent country that we are all blessed to call home. America has never heard these words from Donald Trump, and it never will. The choice for America next Tuesday could not be clearer. Do you agree? Also, a couple... there's a couple of interesting pieces. Michael Goodwin has a piece out saying Kamala Harris simply cannot escape her ties to Biden and his disastrous administration. She came, she saw, she flopped, said Michael Goodwin. Kamala Harris had one job Tuesday night: to separate herself from the last 4 years of a failed administration and make a persuasive case that the next 4 years under her leadership would be like night and day. Achieving both goals would pose a challenge to even the most gifted and sincere candidate. Because Harris is neither, her claim that she's ready for promotion fell flat. No thank you, no sale. And this was with that speech. And it didn't help that Joe Biden came out and called Trump supporters, meaning half of Americans, garbage. That did not help, because as Chris Cillizza, formerly of CNN, said, that statement by Biden outshined, for lack of a better term, Harris's kind of closing arguments to the American people. The New York Post editorial board, said only Donald Trump can offer voters the kind of strong foreign policy the U.S. needs now. Rich Lowry has a piece also at the New York Post. The power of woke is fading, and Kamala Harris's flip-flops prove it. And that's more about the overall topic of woke. Okay, we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you again to Stacey Romeo for being our guest on the program this morning. Don't forget, on tomorrow's show, we will be talking with former Congressman and current Assembly candidate Joe Sempolinski. Fan favorite Joe Sempolinski. On Friday, we'll be talking to candidate for Chemung County Family Court Judge Matt Bizzetti. And then also on Friday, later on in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Matt McCarthy, running for Steuben County. He's acting Steuben County court judge and family court judge, but he is running for that position now. He was appointed before, now he's running for it, and he'll be on the show on Friday. And then on Monday, Bobby Ann Cox will tell us all about Proposition 1. She was on a little while ago, and we appreciate her coming back on for one last push of talking about Prop 1 that is on your ballot. You just got to turn your ballot over. Have a great day, everyone, and we will be back tomorrow morning with Frankly Speaking at 6 a.m. only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, and we will see you bright and early. I look forward to it already.